Welcome to Hungarian Horizon, a podcast about Hungary, its people, and their stories. My name is Balázs Frei.
And I'm Bálint.
Here with us today is Dr. Dóra Drexler, co-founder and director of the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, the only research institute in Hungary that specializes in organic agriculture, established in 2011 with the aim of promoting organic agriculture in Hungary. The Institute has recently been nominated for the Highlights of Hungary Award for its work with Hungarian Landrace tomato varieties. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, it's a pleasure.
So I understand you received your PhD from Munich Technical University, then started work in Switzerland. What led you to make the decision to come back to Hungary?
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. I studied first abroad during my university third year. I studied in Germany, also at the Technical University of Munich. And then afterwards, due to the contacts and the possibilities with scholarships, I joined again for the PhD. And somehow, I don't know why, but it was never, never a question if I would return or not. Maybe because we lived with my family when I was small, also abroad. We lived in the U.S. in New York City due to a scholarship of my mom, and at that point also it was never kind of a question that we will come back home, although it was in the 80s, far long ago. And it's a funny situation because when I was already grown up, sometime my mom said, like, we were waiting with your dad for so many years. When would you ask why we didn't stay abroad? And somehow you never asked. So that's, I don't know why. That was so natural that, Hungary is our home and we come back. And that's how it happened also after the PhD. And I was working in Budapest, but I was searching for some international contacts, and that was when I applied the job in Switzerland to lead a project. And the aim of the project was basically to foster organic research in Hungary. So that was how it all began, with the foundation of the Research Institute.
Can you walk us through the founding of the Research Institute?
Yeah, it was a nice constellation because a foundation, it's called Pancivis Foundation. It belongs to the Esterházy family heritage. And they decided to fund a project in Hungary for organic research. And they asked the Swiss Research Institute of Organic Agriculture to mentor this or supervise this project, and that's how the job announcement was made through FIBU Switzerland, so the Research Institute of Organic Agriculture in Switzerland, and that's how it all began. And we went out together with one of my colleagues for half a year to Frei, which is between Basel and Zurich, to learn, basically learning by doing what's going on in this field of research, and to plan how we want to commence the project in Budapest, in Hungary. And that's the way it all started. And then in 2011, as you mentioned, the ÖMKI, the Hungarian Research Institute of Organic Agriculture, was founded.
Why should we go organic?
Yeah, it's a good question, because a lot of mainstream agricultural institutions, companies ask the same thing. And it's basically quite a new opportunity that arose as a grassroots initiative originally. And by now it has also gained on weight the messages that organic brings to people today, because everybody now is already aware of climate change, biodiversity loss of soil, and I could I could go on with listing the global challenges of food security and so on. And organic was always, from the beginning, a system that aimed to reach sustainability and aimed to close the cycles, nutrient cycles, as much as possible, and provide healthy food through nature conservation methods, so to say, so without destroying our natural resources, simply put. And it becomes more and more important in our days, and that's why I think it gains momentum.
And your work on Hungarian landrace tomato varieties is widely regarded as a huge success. What are Hungarian landrace tomato varieties, and why are they important?
Yeah, landraces or heirloom varieties, they have different names. They come from a time before the professional work of breeders. So nowadays, breeding is a specialized profession. And if we take tomatoes, usually hybrids are bred, which means that it's a genetically very uniform seed, basically, which is used, and you cannot propagate it again yourself because it's a crossing between two lines, and afterwards it's going to separate again into different populations. And these heirloom or landrace varieties, they come from a time when people saved their own seed, and they selected what was best for their garden or their region based on their own preferences and the environmental selection processes. So it's landrace is the result of both, basically, a natural selection and the selection of the grower. And these landraces are not uniform. So genetically, they're also diverse, and also in their form, their taste, their color, they're very unique and very diverse. And their cultivation was never focused on industrialized systems. It was more the home grower who had it in the backyard. And after the industrialization of agriculture, the so-called Green Revolution in the 60s in Hungary, they disappeared, basically. The landraces were forgotten, so to say, because tomato production became industrialized as well, and uniformized machinery was developed, and there were certain target attributes of a plant that should be reached. And so these old landraces basically would have gone lost if not for the gene bank, which was then founded at the right moment, and they collected in Hungary these seeds, and they kept it all along, even today in Tapioszala. The gene bank is the place where you can find loads of landraces and their seeds. And in 2012, we thought that it would be really nice to get back to this diversity, and we asked for a selection of tomato landraces from the gene bank to test them, to cultivate them with our partners, with our on-farm network, which are basically organic growers around the country, just to see if they are suitable today, if they can be grown organic, and what people say, how they accept this diversity in contrast to, the tomato which you can get in the supermarket.
Which is red and round.
Yes.
You kind of answered the question, why is biodiversity important, but could you just explain a bit more on that? Why is it so significant to maintain this biodiversity?
Yes, it's a very good question again, and it's if you saw the film of David Attenborough, the last one, he also explains broadly on this. Basically, if you put it simply, biodiversity is our insurance. So if something happens, if something goes wrong, if the circumstances change, then we humans as well, but also plants and our food and animals, we can adapt due to this diversity. So there's a famous story when in Manchester, during the industrialization of the city, these spotted moths who were white and black spots were on it because they wanted to hide themselves on the bark of trees. And in a couple of years, because everything became dark due to the pollution, the flies became also black with small white spots, because only that 10%, which was actually always caught by birds before, because they stood out from the crowd, so to say. But due to this big change of environment, they were the ones who survived, and they were the ones who after 5-10 years were the 90% of the population. So just as an example, if there wouldn't have been this diversity, which for one may seem, why are there black flies when every bark is white? But then something changes, and you realize that the survival depended on this diversity. So that's how it is also in agriculture. And what you can observe is that really a low number of plants are cultivated for food, and 9 species basically produce more than half of our food. And even within these 9 species, the varieties are very limited. So the genetic biodiversity is narrowed down, and that's why we thought it's kind of our heritage and the source of our resilience if we can get back to these land races and their diversity.
You're very eloquent, which is very nice, because we don't have to ask the question.
I talk a lot.
The thing is, the audience doesn't want to hear us. They want to hear you, right? So, and how much emphasis does Hungary as a nation place on biodiversity as an issue compared to other European states?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer, actually. I think that we have the advantage that a lot of natural habitats have been saved or are still with us in Hungary. Mm-hmm. So grasslands, for example, steppe vegetation. And also, if you compare with those Western European countries, for example, where really everything is tamed, so to say. So a very intensive agriculture was always or has developed. Mm-hmm. You can see a much higher biodiversity in the Hungarian landscapes. A lot of botanist colleagues reassured me about this, that we still have a kind of natural advantage in this respect, but the tendency is unfortunately not so positive. So even in the Natura 2000 areas, which are a kind of protected area, mm-hmm. The biodiversity loss is present, and there is the Society for the Protection of Birds. Mm-hmm. They do a survey every year, and they have created a kind of index for biodiversity in agricultural landscapes. And you can see that in the last 20 years, a horrible number of 25% was lost. At least this index has gone down 25%, which means that we have a lot of potential to do things better or change things, especially in the agricultural cultivation systems where biodiversity loss should be stopped.
And could you tell us what was the Institute's strategy for popularizing these landrace varieties?
Well, first we did the usual, not usual research, because we did this participatory research with the farmers, which made an awareness in a smaller circle of people who were engaged in producing them. And later on, when we had our results and identified about 6 land races which we thought were really doing well under current circumstances and are worthy to be grown again on a broader scale, then we introduced them through an adoption campaign. So we said that adopt a landrace tomato, and that was when first broader public could access them again as seedlings. And then we have the luck that one of the big retail chains in Hungary was very dedicated to the topic, and since 2 years, this will be the 3rd year, they are distributing the seedlings all over Hungary in their shops. It's one weekend kind of sale of Landrace tomato seedlings, but this way thousands of seedlings can be accessed throughout the country. And in Budapest, we also have takeaway points where people can register themselves and then pick up their seedlings.
Mm-hmm. And could we see Hungarian landrace varieties become more widespread internationally, especially in organic agriculture?
It would be an interesting future prospect. We are not yet there, I guess, because we face now the problem that as a research institute, that's not our main profile to provide products for retailers, but the interest of people is so high that last year we got constant phone calls after this weekend sale that, oh, how can I get it? It's already sold out, and was really in 1-2 hours the seedlings were bought, and this is why this year we more than doubled the amount which an organic farmer partner produces, and we hope that we can kind of match the requirement of the buyers, but thinking even internationally seems for us now a bit of a challenge, a bigger challenge, but why not? I mean, I think, I hope that it will be possible, or at least if it's not us as a research institute, then we find the suitable partners who would take this up.
Yes, we may need to establish an institute for the propagation of Hungarian sisal.
Yeah, exactly.
Let Hungary plant its seed into the fertile ground of many other nations. Yes, red, white, and green tomatoes.
Yeah, but I have to say that landraces as such and their cultivation is quite popular in other countries already sometime earlier. So in Hungary, we are just now coming back to these old varieties, but in Austria and Switzerland, Germany, there are great initiatives as well already running. So,
what are the institution's main public contributions, both at the domestic and at an international level? So, like regarding the farmers, we have read that you have this living
laboratory,
project.
Yes, so the legal form as well in which we operate is public benefit non-profit LTD. So we have a lot of kind of public activities, and these are mainly focused, of course, on research. But as you mentioned, we use quite new methodologies like this living lab method. And we were just acknowledged last year also on the European level by the European Network of Living Labs. The main thing here is the participatory aspect, so that we involve the farmers themselves and all other actors of a value chain, for example, to solve the problems that exist in their realms, and try to bring solutions which they can apply then in practice. And that's, at least when we started, that was critically different from the academic way of working. We got a lot of critique that our experiments are not on research stations, for example, but they are on fields of farmers. They are more simple in their design, and it has turned a lot since then in the last 10 years. It's more respected now, let's say it in this way, to involve the actors directly in research and step out of the ivory tower, so to say.
And you cooperate with several international partners. Do you consider such cooperation important for your work?
Yes, very much. We have a lot of European Union projects, Horizon 2020. It's called the European Research Framework, which has just ended now, and the new one will begin. And we're a small institute, a small private institute in Hungary, which is quite unusual. And even though we were the ones who had the highest number of these international projects, which is really incredible if you look at all the huge universities with thousands of employees and big institutions. We have now 20 people working at UMKI, but this was always a very important point for us to keep in touch with the international centers of sustainable agriculture research, and it's really a very also motivating to keep in touch with colleagues working around Europe. Mostly we have contacts within Europe.
So you're small but impactful, just like Hungary.
And what are the other projects are you working on currently?
Oh, we are also working with landraces of ancient cereals. They are called emmer and einkorn. They were the ones which were cultivated, kind of the first human cultivated grains, basically. And they are also really interesting because of the nutritional properties and also because of their resilience to climate change. So that's a project where we would like to step also towards the product development and lead them back to the shelves of of retailers or of shops to consumers. And then again, we are working on very different projects. For example, on policy, we take part in a European project which is paving the way for agroecological transition. Generally, how to motivate farmers, how to give incentives to cultivate more sustainably while remaining in an economic sense also viable. So a lot of different aspects.
And how do you see the future of organic food production in Hungary? What is your ideal version of organic food in Hungary? And what role do you imagine the Institute will play in this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I hope and I feel that organic food production has to boom in Hungary as well. We are yet on the curve upways, but in the beginning, in the last 5 years, the organic area doubled in Hungary, but there is still a lot of potential, and especially in the added value of products. I hope that we will enhance that, and the processing of the raw material which is produced here will commence also inland. Today, it's the majority of organic products is exported as raw material because the demand of the market in Western European countries is really high. So organic is growing 10%. The market of organic products is in Europe growing 10% every year. And some countries like Denmark, for example, have already their public procurement, their canteens, 60% organic. I just read that in Copenhagen, even 90% organic. So that means, all the schools, all the hospitals, all the official cuisines. So it's a way to go still. But I'm quite sure that this booming is going to happen, and we as an institute also work on this, that we help the farmers and help those who are the actors of such value chains to find each other and to establish the opportunity for this sector to grow.
I would have a question regarding your personal career development, if you don't mind. we were just wondering, as there is a gender gap in this sector, how did you manage to reach a success, and how is it like to be a woman in leadership? If you could explain on that.
Yeah, thank you. That's an interesting question, which is rarely asked, actually. But I get really positive feedback being a female in leadership, and it has also some advantages in a sense when it comes to policies that try to balance these numbers, because there are really not too many women in leading positions, especially in agriculture. I don't feel any negative aspects, to tell you the truth about it. It might be also because of a personal kind of attitude towards this work, and my husband also knows that we're waiting for our third child, but the fourth child is always going to be the research institute. So it's a personal matter to me as well, that everything goes well and it's developing, and that's why maybe I'm more addicted than the usual. There are, of course, instances and circumstances when one can be negatively discriminated as a woman scientist, but I don't think that should be in the center of consideration when you choose what you want to do. In the center, it should be your own ambition and your enthusiasm for a topic, and my advice would be to disregard all kinds of negative influences which might occur, not necessarily, but they might occur, and go on and proceed and do your best. And that always, hard work always wins.
Bears fruit, does it?
Yes, exactly, it bears fruit.
What does it mean to the Research Institute that it was nominated for the Highlights of Hungary?
It's really an honor, and it shows us, it reassures us that we reach a broader audience than only the scientific audience, let's say. So I think that in order to convert the agricultural systems, it's very important also that consumers are aware what they're eating, where their food comes from, and the best way to talk to them is through gastronomy, not through science, unfortunately. And agricultural research, they are not so much interested usually, but in a nice meal, in a great tasting tomato, it's much easier to convince. And that's what we hope to reach, and that's why it's really great that we get even more opportunity to showcase our work through this nomination.
And you do also have partnerships with chefs and restaurants, don't you?
Yes, yeah. So basically the chef of Pajta Bistro, which is a quite high-ranking gastronomic institute in the western part of Hungary, Richard Farkas, he was the one who nominated us because we worked together. He adopted also 40 seedlings of Landrace tomatoes, and he has grown them in the garden of the restaurant and created really special food from it. And that's how he got to know us and he nominated us.
And are there any long-term plans or goals set for the next 10 years?
Ooh, for the next 10 years, so that should be probably, it's a bit long term. For the next 5 years, I would say we have a more clear view that we would really like to achieve at least as much as we did in the last 5. So we hope to have grown even larger as an institute and have even more impact on what's going on in the sector in Hungary. So I hope we succeed with this.
Do you have any specific message or advice for girls who want to develop a career in science?
Well, generally, I would have the message to youngsters or students, I would say, maybe not specifically gender-based, but generally, I think it's a great adventure to become engaged in science, or especially in natural sciences. In organic, we discover, or we are researching solutions which are really new, which the chemical agriculture has answered in its own way already, but there are no existing answers yet in the organic sector or the sustainable non-chemical way of producing food, and I think that could be intriguing for young scientists to get involved and to develop new results in this aspect.
Good luck with all of your endeavors, and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
It was great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please like and subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell icon.